Hi guys, I'm Samir here representing ClimateFast. We are excited to share with you where the climate voting record project is today. So, so who are we? So a bit of background on who we are. ClimateFast is a volunteer-run nonprofit organization dedicated to building a strong, informed public who can push government and leaders to take fast and meaningful action against climate change. Climate Fast initially began from the Hungry for Climate Leadership Fast in Virgil, held for 12 days on Parliament Hill in 2012, which is almost 14 years ago now. Since then, Climate Fast has evolved to focus more on local climate action. So some of our current initiatives we have going on right now are the Climate Voting Records website, which is our topic of today's presentation, the Toronto Climate Film Festival, which we had an event over the past weekend, and the Say No to AI Data Center campaign. So a bit about our project. One of our current projects is the Climate Voting Records website, which launched in February of 2025. The website's goal is to track and show how the mayor and other city councilors are voting on climate-related policies, especially ahead of the 2026 mayoral election. And how do we decide if a policy is related to climate? The voting record website uses the Transform TO strategy as a guide to decide which policies are climate related and should be included in the website. This includes things like supporting green electrification, transport infrastructure, bike lanes, flood prevention infrastructure, social policies, and much more. So this is our website. You could copy that or scan that QR code if you want to visit it. Uh, so this is how do we get our data? In order to get our data, we use the voting data from the City of Toronto Open Data Portal, which allows us to track the mayor and councillors' vote on different items. The data includes votes from city council and committees where councillors can vote yes, no, or be absent. We then review the data and find which items are related to climate. After that, we look more closely at each item to see if it actually helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions and support the city's climate goal in the Transform Toronto strategy. To do this, we check the Toronto Meeting Management Information System, or TIMIS, TIMMIS, which provides more detail about each councillor item, and so we can better understand what policy is about.
All right, so over the past year, we've been working on councillor climate profile cards. So we've been looking at all the research we've been doing, looking back to policies from 2022 to today to see how the councillors are doing to create a report card. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Dana, who's going to talk more about the more quantitative side and how we went with the grading. Let me just check one thing. Oh, okay, never mind. I've got one more slide still. So for the project process, we've been collecting and analyzing all the data from our site between 2022 to 2026 and developed a grading system based on how councillors voted throughout this time period. We looked at all the yes votes, which represent whether they supported a climate-friendly vote or not. No, which would be that they didn't support a climate-friendly vote. And then NA was, well, they were absent.
So we considered 4 different grading options. The first option is the grades based on the percent of yes votes out of all possible votes. So there were 75 items that came up in this time period that City Council considered and voted on. We really liked the strong distribution here. You can see lots of different colors. The green is A, and the red is F. So you can see the distribution is really strong, but we did want to consider how those absences or NA votes would factor in. So option 2 considers just the percent of yes votes out of items that councillor voted on. So it removes all of the absences or NAs. You can see that bumps a lot of grades up. So we do know that the absences play a really important role, and we know they can be strategic. So we wanted to consider both options, which led us to number 3, which is an average of these first 2 options. We also wanted to consider or recognize that some items are maybe more impactful or have a higher importance than some items. So we looked into selecting a weighted average that would give us the opportunity to highlight some of those priority items. So number 4, this is the grading scheme that we chose. This weights 80% of the total grade is at number 3 that I just shared. And then 20% of this final grade is based on the percent of yes votes on priority items that councillor voted on. So to select priority items, each team member reviewed all of those 75 items from this time period and selected about 5 to 10 items that really stood out to them as most impactful or important for climate action. Again, considering our focus and alignment with the Transform TO strategy. You can see some of these examples. And then this final grading scheme that we looked at on the previous slide ended with an 80% weight towards, again, that average of yes votes out of all items and yes votes out of items they voted on, and a 20% weight towards the yes votes on priority items that they voted on. Those priority items shook out next.
So as for the design for the overall climate report cards, around the time that our group began discussing how we wanted to design them, the World Series was going on, and that's when every Torontonian became a Jays fan. We decided to take that as inspiration and combined that with a look of a generic school report card. In addition, we wanted to use colors that aligned with climate action, i.e. green for the environment, but we also wanted to use colors that illustrated how certain councillors voted towards these items. So for example, if a councillor voted no to a lot of climate-related items, then there would be a lot of red in their profile card. But as seen here, Lily Cheng is a good climate voter, so she has a lot of green elements. While each councillor was given an overall grade, we also had a grading system for different categories that related to climate action. For example, we have different categories like transit, bike lanes, greener buildings, and councillors were given a grade for each of those categories. So while they had an overall grade, say of a B, maybe they were more passionate about one specific category and then they had a higher grade for that. So the highlights section, we wanted to illustrate a few different actions that councillors have done for different climate policies. This could have included proposing a policy, seconding a policy that another councillor had proposed, or even making amendments to other climate-related policies where they were updating items that created greater action for that policy. So for example, Lily Cheng is very passionate about increasing support for Indigenous communities and also creating amendments that increased support for tackling homelessness in the city. And she also proposed a policy that expanded transit and improved bike lanes in her ward of Ward 18 Willowdale. So we decided to highlight that in this specific section. We also wanted to answer 2 important questions that related to how different councillors voted towards these issues. So the first is if their climate habits towards voting changed between 2022 and 2026. This obviously could be seen as improving, worsening, or staying the same. And another important question that we wanted to ask is if they voted towards a very important key policy in climate, which is the Transform TO net zero strategy, which aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2040. Finally, as we kind of discussed before with having a QR code, we have a QR code at the bottom, which allows you to see the site and specifically this councillor's information with all of their voting, whether they voted yes, no, or were absent to items, and also allows you to filter different categories related to what they voted on. And I'm going to pass it on to Neela.
Yeah, so now we're going to see how this sort of played out with City Council and how they voted. So we just have a quick rundown of the top 5 performers in terms of how they voted for climate, and then the bottom 5 performers. So it's just in green and in red. And then we also highlight the councillors that performed above average, so with a grade of 95% or higher. And then these were the 11 councillors that voted yes on every identified priority item. And then these were the councillors that just presented most absent through the voting process. I'll pass it on to Anna.
All right. So some of the next steps, we're going to be presenting the results of these profile cards to different groups. So if you know of a group that might be interested in these findings, please let us know. We'd be happy to present. Or share also the PDFs to these profile cards. We haven't quite finished them yet, but once they're available, we will definitely be sharing that out and making it public on our social media. The other part of this project is expanding it to other cities. So right now the site is for Toronto. Brampton actually has a very similar site that's coming out for this, and we've been collaborating with them. It looks very similar, like I mentioned, but they'll have some customization and like features that work for them. And Hamilton has also shown some interest, so hopefully we can get that going too. Obviously, a big caveat is, does the city have a voting records data set? And if they don't, potentially they can manually do it through looking at meeting notes and doing that. But yeah, hopefully we can get other cities involved and we can see that it's been working for Brampton and potentially a couple others. So yeah, contact us. Our Instagram is at ClimateFast Action. That's probably one of the best ways to stay up to date on the work that we do. Also, we have a newsletter. So if you sign up for a newsletter, that happens monthly, and you can learn about what ClimateFast is up to, as well as what other climate groups are. So it's just a good way to be in the know of the climate community. And then if you ever want to reach out to us, our email is info@climatefastaction.ca. And yeah, that's everything. So happy to take questions.
Hey guys, thank you for the presentation. Inspiring work. Two-pronged question. One, were you guys going to print these? Yeah. And two, could you make them public so other people can print them too? Yeah. Because I would love to give these to some people. And I'm sure, given how awesome the thing you've made is, people would love to help you distribute. If you make it easy to print, they're going to help.
Yes, we can. We need to get a budget for it, but once we do that, then we can get it printed, and they will for sure be available online.
Thank you.
How would someone go about other municipalities, other places to spread the idea?
Could you repeat it?
Yeah, so right now it's there's some interest in Hamilton and Brampton. How would you spread the word, or how could someone spread the word?
Yeah, to help spread the word, talk to your friends, talk to people in other climate groups. To be honest, it's been quite challenging. We've sent out emails to every climate group that we can think of in the GTA, and we've only heard back from 2. And I think we sent around 30 or 40 emails. So emails aren't working, social media outreach isn't working, but those personal contacts really matter. And that's how I think those two successful situations worked out, because someone knew someone and then someone nudged them and said, hey, you got an email in your inbox, and they're not like trying to scam you. So yeah, if you know someone personally, that's probably the best way. And it doesn't just have to be GTA. Most other cities in the GTA don't really have a robust voting record system like Toronto. Vancouver is probably our next best bet for something similar to Toronto. So if you have a contact in Vancouver, please let us know.
I want to ask on what sort of impact you're hoping to come from each of these voting cards, or each of these cards. Whether that, like, which audience do you want to be the ones looking at this? What change do you want to come from? Maybe it's the councillors, maybe it's people who are looking at the cards. What change do you want to happen?
Yeah, so whatever our goal is to make sure the public is informed, that's why our grading cards are pretty easy to read. And so basically anyone who's either interested in the climate or they're worried about climate change, or just everyday people, so they're more informed about whether or not their own councillors are voting in their best interest.
As a follow-up, do you want us to make their like, I wouldn't say force, but do you want their grades to go, you want them to all have A's, right? Is it a part of this impact is to make their force the counselors,
Yeah, I mean, if you
please?
look at your, say if you're conscious about climate and your climate counselor says they do care about the climate, but then you check their grade, it's a B or a C. Well, then you realize that, well, they're saying one thing, but they're doing something else because, we're counting votes. And so, yeah, you could technically go up to your counselor, or you could, not technically, you can go up to your counselor, show out this, and then show them their voting records and say, well, yeah, you're not doing this, even though you're saying it. So yes, we do want more counselors to actually act upon take meaningful action against climate change. But also, ideally, those red counselors, we want them voted out. If you're in their district, you see them constantly voting. No, Stephen Holiday, especially. I don't like a guy.
Super attractive visuals. Question about what level of activity you might be thinking of for the elections. So you had mentioned the elections are coming up. Are you thinking of getting registered as a third-party advertiser? Are you thinking of doing a scorecard? Like, what do you guys have in mind?
Yeah, so we've talked to a couple people. I don't fully know all the rules with the registrations, but we're a grassroots group, so we're not a not-for-profit. So our rules are different from a registered not-for-profit. We don't, as a grassroots group, have to register or let people know that we're doing this because we're not, registered. So we can do kind of what we want. We're ultimately a resident group, and we have a lot of freedom in that regards. But from a financial perspective, obviously, if you're registered, there are a lot of benefits from coming as a not-for-profit. But on the plus side, we don't need to be super careful around elections. We can talk pretty freely without getting penalized or, thinking too much about it.
This is super awesome. And I'm like, I'm kind of thinking, I don't know, it's like a whole other project to like, because there's different people who want to get this information in different ways. And it's like, if we're like I don't know, like report cards normally go to parents who are like responsible for, making sure a change happens and there's care involved. So I'm just kind of thinking like, obviously there's a much more dynamism, like punk bands get out the message by like putting stickers in bathroom stalls and like, and I'm just like, I feel like there's so much room for creativity and a whole other project in the distribution channels because you've done like the hard work of like making the website, collecting and aggregating the data. But yeah, are there ways to like kind of, I don't know, like create a network? I guess I'm curious if it's a whole other project, and are you thinking of it as a whole other project about distributing this, and like, are there interesting ways that you've thought to do that?
Yeah, so one of the other things we do is, other than the website, is holding a public event. So where people could network with us and other climate organizations. So for example, on Sunday, we had a ClimateFast movie night where regular people came, but also Greenpeace and TEAR and us. And we showed, I think, 3 movies, and after people could mix and mingle. That way, if people want to join us, they can. But if people also wanted to not join us, even though it was our event, or join Greenpeace, they could do that too.
I realize that better. It's like, I think sometimes brands, when they have this, they call it like a street team kit. Or something. And I'm just curious if there's like a version of that to all the different minds and the ways people think. Yeah, little package so other people could do it.
Can you repeat the question real quick?
Oh, I guess I was wondering, is there like a way to, so you guys at the center are not organizing like a street team kit? Is that like a thing that is it something that you're doing, or is it worth doing?
I think that's a great idea. And I think we've been so focused on developing the grading system and putting the cards together. And our next step is how to get this out there more. So we definitely, like, ideally we'd be able to print and distribute at events like this and others that, groups attend and that are around town. And I think being able to hand out physical flyers and definitely like encourage people to bring them around to others, and also having them available online so that others can print them out and encourage them to share Definitely social media will be a big part of how we push this out there. But
you can put money on like UPS store account. Just let anyone just print your shit. Stuff like random things like
great
that.
idea.
Thank you. Sorry. I know it. It's like a game of it's sometimes called, I don't know, like
A street team.
net-centric organizing is I've heard it called, but that's not the best word.
We don't know what that is and come up with ideas because it sounds interesting.
So, question about data resolution, and I know that this is something that Matt Elliott with City Hall Watcher also comes across as well. Like, if you look at the map version of your data, like one sticks out a lot because it's just the one councillor who always votes no for everything, which kind of skews the information for all of the other councillors. Are you looking at ways that you can kind of try and change that resolution a bit, or I guess provide context for people who don't follow along a lot?
I think we tried to account for that a bit in the weighting system that we developed. I think the additional information, the highlights and the grades on specific topics are where some of that more nuanced information will come out, hopefully. And you can see, I mean, I don't know really what to do about the one who votes no on everything. I mean, aside from the big F across the board and making it all red. But we definitely hope that this, and the cards do have that QR code to our website. You can really dig into all of the details. You can get lots of information about what they've done, amendments that were proposed. And so we do hope that this drives more folks to dig into their councillor or specific topics that they care about on the Climate Voting Records website. I don't know.
I think also like here, this is the map you're talking about. Like Stephen Holiday stands out a lot, and then everything else sort of looks green. And I think that's just more of a color coding issue. Like if we can chunk it better, some would be red, some would be yellow, some would be green. So that's our next step once we have the grading, which we do. Right? Like this is the grading. Oh, we can now do the color coding. So we just need to implement that visually. But the reason why that map looks very green is because that's just looking at the number of times the councillor said yes and the number of times the councillor said no. And Stephen Holiday just says no to everything. But this grading looks more colorful because this includes the absence. And when you incorporate the absence, Brad Bradford's going to the bathroom a lot. We have to sort of figure out a couple ones like Rachel Chernoslin because she's been in for such a short time. But yeah, a lot of people are absent. And if you're absent, this was a big discussion we had is like, do we count it as seriously as a no? How do we go about that? And this grading system that we chose weighs the absence a little bit more seriously. So it's not all green and just one person's red.
Okay, thank you so much for all your questions, and thank you guys for answering.